In today's video, I'm getting out on a trail ride and I'm going to introduce you guys to my personal hardtail, the Esker Japhy. So today's video is part trail ride, but also sort of a review. So I've been riding this Esker Japhy for, I don't know, maybe 6 to 9 months now. I've actually got quite a few miles on this Esker Japhy just in the little while that I have been riding it. So as you can see, my frame is titanium, and this has been a really fun bike, really fun geometry. It's a little bit longer, a little bit shorter in the chainstay, so it's hard to find that combination on a trail hardtail. A lot of times they like to just have like short reach, really long chainstays, which is great. That's going to feel really stable and just very pedally. But I like something that, I can have a little fun on. So this bike has a little bit of rock and roll personality. This is a size medium, and the reach is around 450. So a little bit on the long side. Chainstay is around 423, 425 maybe, that's quite short. It's hard to find a bike, a trail bike, with that short of chainstays. And what that does is it gives the bike just a little bit tighter turning capacity in the rear end. It makes it easier to get the bike aloft. If you're popping and playing off of little things, maybe hitting little drops on the hardtail occasionally, and at the last minute I can get the bike set up really well for a little drop. And yeah, it just has a lot more play and personality. This bike is on 229s, but I really love the way it corners because it's a little bit longer. When I corner fast, I don't like to get back. I like to get low on the bike. And I feel like having it be a little bit longer gives me space that I feel like I can get into the cockpit nice and low, still aggressive over the front end. But because it's got those short chainstays, the rear end still kind of cuts the corners kind of nice, kind of tight, kind of sweet, which is wonderful when you can get that feeling on a 29er, This bike also has tire clearance for wider tires. It can take 2.6, maybe even up to 2.8, but I'm just running 2.3s because I feel like that's kind of a sweet spot for me. It's a little bit lighter. I'm a light rider, less to pedal around, but for those of you who like to run even wider tires, it can handle that. When I was talking to my husband, Steve, from Hairdtail Party about the head tube angle, one thing that he said is important to look at, which I was like, whoa, how did I not know this, is sometimes, especially with hardtails, sometimes they measure the head tube angle at sag, so with weight on it, and sometimes they don't. And so it's important to know that so that if you're comparing bikes, you're comparing apples to apples. Because I think that on Esker's website, this head tube angle of this bike is measured at like 30% sag, which is a lot. So Steve, he said when you calculate the head tube angle on this bike with no sag, it's about 64.2, which is pretty slack. I'm sure that, having that slack head tube angle is probably contributing to, along with other things, to the feel of why this bike is so fun to corner downhill at high speeds. So a lot of what went on to this frame is just stuff that I'd had on my other hardtail, and we just swapped things over. Steve upgraded me to some beautiful 5-dev cranks, and I've already started to wear some of the color off of them, but that's the price of having fun on your bike. I've got 2 water bottle cages on here, which I do use a lot. I also have these beautiful custom wheels that Steve built up for me because he speaks my love language. And I ran these on a full suspension for a while, but now they are on the hardtail. These are Ibis carbon rims. They've got bird spokes and these beautiful onyx Vesper hubs. These are the ones that have the ceramic bearings, and it's in this beautiful custom peacock blue color. I could probably build this bike a little bit lighter if I wanted, but I'm really happy with it as it is. Now, just a word about how this, when you're a lighter rider, so some of the more petite female riders, bike frames might feel a little bit different to us than they do to some of the more average riders who are probably like, between 165, 180 pounds. So the lighter you are, the less flex you can put on a frame. And so, you're just not as heavy. You can't make a frame bend as much, which is part of what helps take some of the sting out. Especially when you're riding a hardtail, you feel it. So sometimes I'll ride a hardtail that didn't feel harsh to another just kind of average profile rider, but it felt harsh to me and beat me up. But I have been really, really happy with this Esker. It was a nice, gentle ride from the beginning, not tons of sting. I can even take it off some of the smaller drops and I don't feel like my teeth are gonna fall out, which I've had happen with some hardtails. So I feel like this frame is really great. It's done really well for me as a smaller, more petite rider, very comfortable ride. And then when I put these awesome carbon wheels with the bird spokes and the Onyx hub, so now I've got high engagement and also the bird spokes, they just take that last little bit of sting out. So I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Do you have a hardtail? Do you have a hardtail and a full suspension? What bikes are you riding? And if you were going to add a hardtail to your setup, what one would it be? I got some new ice cream gloves from Hand Up, just kind of fun. Since I got this hardtail, I've been doing probably like 50% of my rides on my hardtail, 50% on my full suspension. Because if I'm doing a ride where I'm just gonna do more like moderate trails like Blue and Down, it's fun and I can cover ground quickly on the hardtail. Also, if I'm doing a longer ride, I tend to grab this one too. The 28 pounds is not super light, but it's a lot lighter than a full suspension. This bike is like a little bit longer and slacker than what you might ideally choose for a long ride, but since most of my rides are like 2-hour rides, I don't mind. You know, this one fits the bill, and every once in a while when I'm doing something a little bit longer, it can handle it just fine. So even though it's pretty slack, the bike rides pretty light, and I feel like I can still maneuver it really well, even on tricky climbs and tight turns. But definitely where the slack head tube angles really shine is going downhill, a little more speed. But I'm amazed at how this bike is so much slacker than I thought it was, because it handles really well. In Sedona, there's a lot of slow speed stuff here because everything is so technical. The climbs are so intermittent. And even though like the blue trails are kind of the sweet spot, I still do push this bike into black diamond terrain occasionally. And it's good for anything I am. Just as a rider, you just have to take a little more of the hits and anticipate things. Ride light with your feet when you're on a hardtail, so you're not dinging your rim. This is the northernmost section of Gardner that I'm on right now. Whee! It is so awesome how, like, this frame already has a pretty gentle hardtail ride. And then the wheels, putting these wheels on it really did just kind of take the extra sting out. Now it's just kind of ideal for me. Get a great ride out of this. We're on a trail called Rupp now. And I call this climb up ahead nobody's favorite climb. Nothing exciting on it, no rewarding moves. Just a bit of a beast. It's just goes and goes and goes and goes. It's tricky maintaining traction in the loose, but we do it. 1 hour later. Just kidding. We're like 5 minutes later, but we're still climbing. Nothing like climbing in loose gravel. It's hard to capture this on the wide angle lens, but the view that direction is so cool. There's this horseshoe shaped alcove that's mescal. What do you guys think of my new sunglasses? These are some frames by Jewelable called Frequency. These ones are new to me. I've been wearing the Furies for a really long time, but I kind of feel like these actually fit my face a little bit better. Got kind of a small face. Let me know what you think. And these particular ones also have the reactive lenses, which get lighter and darker to change with the lighting conditions. If you're interested in purchasing any products from Jewelable, helmet, sportswear, leisure wear, make sure you check out the link in my profile. That'll save you 30%. Still climbing. I'm just having a grand old time. The first couple times I took this bike out, I was like, oh man, I forgot how easy rear wheel lifts are when you don't have rear suspension. It's just like instant power. But when you go to lift that rear wheel up and you don't like lose a bunch of energy into the rear suspension, it's a beautiful thing. Because this hub is silent, when I'm going downhill, I can sneak up on people kind of quick. So I try to call out a little bit sooner, warn people I'm coming. Easy to give some poor unsuspecting hiker a heart attack. Not a lot of spots where we really can get up to speed in Sedona, but this is one. Love the simplicity of a hardtail too. Maintenance, it's less suspension to maintain, less bearings. I mean, depending on where I live, I can definitely imagine scenarios where I could just ride a hardtail exclusively and just love it. When I'm riding my hardtail, kind of alternating with my full suspension, I definitely have more finesse. It reminds me to just think more about when my front wheel reaches something versus when my rear wheel does, and tracking that, planning ahead. Hardtails make a good rider if you pay attention. But I will say, if you ride a hardtail, a place like this where, you know, even these kind of spinny trails that we've got, they still have enough chunder. You gotta make sure you're running enough tire pressure so you don't ding a rim. Love all the back-to-back turns through here. Whee. I feel like I so rarely see a chainstay in the 420s when you're looking at trail bikes. A lot of fun. It's nice having a bike that, you know, it's got some kind of shreddy geometry. I can take it on some of the harder trails and I can get into a really comfortable descending position, taking chunk and some of the drops. But it's also configured in a way that's fairly light, you know, like I said, 28 pounds. So I can pull some longer days on this. You know, I can do a 20, 30 mile ride on this and it's not gonna wear me out terribly. So it gives me a lot of versatility. Well, there she is. I want to hear from you guys. Do you have a hardtail? Do you have a hardtail and a full suspension? What's your current bike setup? And if you were going to add one bike to your setup, what would be the perfect bike to fit the bill for you? If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you check out some of these other videos here because I think you might like them too. Thanks for watching. Get dusty.